Ok. Bem-vindos a todos os seguidores do Instituto Trezeno. Hoje temos uma convidada especial, Kristen Ziccarelli, do America First Policy Institute. Ela é uma perita e uma analista sobre imigração e segurança doméstica e é também diretora da cooperação global do mesmo instituto. A Kristen aceitou o nosso convite para uma pequena entrevista connosco, focada no tópico da imigração. Há vários aspectos nos quais Portugal e os Estados Unidos têm muito em comum no que diz respeito à imigração ilegal, mas um dos principais é o problema das organizações não governamentais subversivas, às quais o Estado americano e o Estado português têm que fazer face. Nesse sentido, convidámos a Kristen para dar o seu ponto de vista, para nos dar uma opinião de especialista sobre como é que se pode lidar com este tipo de ameaça. Kristen, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I was just explaining to our audience that the one topic, the one aspect, policy aspect, which we share as a difficulty, as a challenge, is how do we deal with subversive NGOs? So these are organizations within our countries which are perfectly legal, but their activities aim at disrupting a rule of law and at endangering sovereignty, and of course, and making our borders more porous than ever. So I'm just going to share a small example. A few years ago, we had a Portuguese activist who was arrested in Italy. This was the first time that Salvini was a minister in Italy. His name was Miguel Duarte, and he was arrested in Italy. But when he was finally released by the Italian authorities, his crime was helping to smuggle people in the Mediterranean into Italy in violation of Italian and European laws. And when he was, I think, arrested for a short time. When he was finally able to come back to Portugal, he was welcomed as a hero by our own president. So our entire political establishment is in on this policy, which subverts our own rule of law. So I'll pass it over to you. How has the Trump administration been dealing with this problem? And is there something that we in Europe can take into consideration, take as a lesson? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of want to back up a little bit, if that's all right, and just explain sort of the layout of the NGO problem in the U.S. Because it is similar, but there's also has its own unique angles as well. So during the Biden border crisis, the whole 4 years of that, we had a lot of NGOs in the faith community, especially, that were being funneled almost $1 billion, I think, together. But yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars to help basically take illegal aliens over the border. They were doing all kinds of activities to subvert U.S. immigration law, actively transporting migrants into the country, fighting enforcement efforts at the border, helping to resettle migrants in American towns and cities, lobbying for open border policies in D.C. They were obviously helping with all kinds of humanitarian aid, sheltering, feeding migrants, getting them bus and plane tickets to get them further into the interior. And of course, this did nothing but act as a magnet for future or more immigration. More people to come to the U.S. It's a huge communication pipeline with illegal aliens that have successfully come across the border unlawfully and been settled in here to tell their families and other people in their community that it's a successful process and that they'll be helped along the way and that they'll be given maps and aid and other things. And so whether they were well-intentioned or not, these NGOs were operating in the final link of a vast transnational human smuggling operation because, of course, we have the Mexican cartels that were extorting them to even get to the border in the first place. So the NGOs were kind of making this whole scheme of criminal activity and exploitation of migrants a reality, and they were incentivizing it, unfortunately. So that's kind of a terrible story in itself. But then on top of that, we have these NGOs are funded, yes, by private donations in some cases, but a lot of them receive large grants from the government. So like I mentioned, $1 billion at least under the Biden administration was going to these NGOs, which of course means that American taxpayers are complicit in this operation, which is terrible. And I don't think any American taxpayer would be comfortable with that. knowing if they knew the real horrors of the process of what was happening. So really, in the past 6 months, President Trump has made it very clear that it is the policy of his administration to stop the funding of NGOs that undermine the national interest, which of course these NGOs are doing by their lobbying for open border policies and their active subversion of federal law enforcement. And he did that on day one with his executive order, one of many that he signed that first day, entitled Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. So that was the first day one EO, and that had a follow-up memo directing each federal agency to send the White House lists of large nonprofits to investigate for this exact sort of activity, trying to find which ones were engaged in these operations to undermine the security, prosperity, and safety of the American people. I know that Congress has been very active on this issue, especially in the last month. The House Homeland Security Committee held a investigation and a probe into over 200 nonprofit organizations for what they might have been doing to subvert federal law enforcement. And there's, I think, at least one piece of legislation in Congress as well, which tries to crack down on the human trafficking element of this. But basically,
can I ask?
yeah.
So this is a Congress initiative. This is not a law enforcement initiative. Like, who identified those 200 NGOs?
I'm not too sure who exactly identified them, but I would guess that it was the members of the House Homeland Security Committee. So they do their own probes and investigations, and that's obviously they're sympathetic to the president's agenda when it comes to stop the funding of NGOs that undermine the national interest. But I would really say, like, the biggest thing that our European allies and partners can learn from this is you don't need a new law to go after these NGOs. You need the political will to do that and to send that message that it's not okay to fund this kind of activity or to do this kind of activity with American taxpayer funding. And then obviously, like, President Trump is using his power to take that away. So.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah, of course.
in prosecuting those organizations, what kind of crimes are being addressed or identified by the administration? Are these, strictly speaking, immigration-related crimes, or do they also go into, say, terrorism or human smuggling? I mean, can one prosecute these organizations for more serious violations?
No, so the organizations have not. It's kind of, I wouldn't really say that they've engaged in illegal activity they're not like supporting terrorism, like, overtly, if that makes sense. Like, they're not directly giving money to terrorist
No, it would be indirectly,
but they're acting as the final link in that chain of other illicit activity. So what they're really kind of getting at here is these NGOs that are doing something like even just the act of giving illegal aliens debit cards when they come into the U.S. and a map of how to get, or a bus ticket of how to get into the city. That makes American taxpayers complicit in this this sort of chain of vast transnational human smuggling operation. Exactly. So that's the illegal part, and the NGOs are just kind of making this happen with the money.
And the actions that the administration is taking, I assume through the prosecutor office, the attorney general's office, the actions they're taking are against individuals or against organizations themselves.
They're against the NGOs.
And what has been the consequence so far? I mean, have any of them been banned or fined? I mean, what have been the consequences?
So as far as I'm aware, the Trump administration has stated that it's the policy of his administration to stop the funding of NGOs that undermine the national interest. But like I mentioned earlier, they're basically having this direction of the federal agencies to identify these nonprofits that should be investigated and should be targeted.
Thank you. What about funding? We heard a lot about the initiative to curb the activities of USAID, namely in what pertained to policies and programs that undermined the U.S. national interest. What about funding? Has funding been addressed? and in what way?
Do you mean funding of the NGOs or
Well,
more broadly?
I would assume, like you said in the beginning, so that the U.S. taxpayer somehow unwittingly gets its money flowing into these organizations. Have those flows of public funding been addressed? Can one say that the administration is now not funding these NGOs in any way whatsoever?
So the actions that the Trump administration took against, or not against, but on USAID were basically to ensure that it's the whole America First mentality, that we have to make sure that American taxpayer dollars are going towards what the American people actually want. And what he directed the government to do was to find out, to kind of take a step back and find out what exactly their money was going to, and to really evaluate whether that was in the U.S. national interest. And so that was a few months ago, I believe, that kind of broke. And the funding, besides, I think, critical humanitarian exceptions, was completely stopped. And the entire State Department, or not the entire State Department, but a good amount of the State Department was reorganized to kind of bring in the USAID mission, the one that's really critical, that we want, that American taxpayers should be supporting, or should be having their tax dollars go to. That was reorganized under a certain sector of the State Department, so that it would be more in line with the U.S. national interest.
Okay, but as far as you're aware, no NGO